Welcome to the third annual Black Women in Cyber panel. We'll discuss the critical role of emotional intelligence. But before we get started, I did want to have Jeff share what BIC is, the whole purpose of the mentorship program, before I quickly go over some housekeeping rules. So, Jess Hoffman, everybody.
Hi, good evening. Welcome, welcome. We are really excited. Thanks for being here. So, what is Blacks in Cybersecurity? A lot of you may already be familiar and be a part of our community, but if not, it's a great organization. It started up as a meetup in about 2018 in the DMV area, and we've grown exponentially across the world with over 30,000 members within our community, bunch of programs, including the mentorship program, which is bringing you this panel this evening. We have Black Women in Cyber, Black Men in Cyber, various red team, blue team cohorts, speaking with confidence. We're at DEF CON every year, you name it, we're here. And our whole mission is to uplift Blacks in cybersecurity and all the options and opportunities that are available. So welcome again. Thank you. The mentorship program is bringing this to you. This panel of excellent, amazing women that we're going to hear from in a moment. And the mentorship mission as well is to make sure that we spread the good news about cyber and get you the support that you need, the kick in the butt that you need to make sure that you're achieving those career goals. So stay tuned. Follow us on LinkedIn to learn more about that program as well as Blacks in Cyber. Back to you.
Thank you, Jess. And again, before we get started, just some quick housekeeping rules. So please keep your cameras on, mics muted. Q&A will happen at the end if time permits. So please submit your questions in the chat throughout the conversation. There will be someone monitoring those submissions. So if you know what questions you want to ask, again, go ahead and put those in the chat or throughout our conversation. If anything comes to mind, put it in the chat and we'll have someone make sure that we get to it if we can. So now that we're on the same page, I'm excited to be joined by five amazing women who are here to share their experiences and expertise in the field of cyber. So please help me welcome your very own, as you just saw on the screen, BIC's Mentorship Program founding board member and DCISO for the City of Philadelphia, Jess Hoffman, Director of Cyber at the United Negro College Fund, Nikki Sanders, Information Security Analyst for FedRAMP, Nicole O, sales engineer for Palo Alto Networks and founder of PATH, Shaniqua Burtz, and me, Delisha Hodo, your mod for this evening. I'm the Assistant Director of Advising for SANS.edu, HBCU, and Cybersecurity Advocate and Champion for Diversity. So with that, let's get to the reason that we're all here, that you're all excited. Thank you so much for your patience with us this evening. As I stated earlier, or as our title suggests, the purpose of this conversation is to highlight the critical role of emotional intelligence. And by definition, emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to achieve your goals, build strong relationships. And actually, let me back up here. We have our fifth amazing person is in the building, KJ Haywood. So you all please give a great welcome to her as well. She works in GRC. She's also a professor, author, AI researcher, the whole thing. So we're in the presence of a legend here at OG. So thank you so much for joining us, KJ. And just to get back to this emotional intelligence thing, again, while we're all here, let's go back to this title. The reason that we're here is to discuss the critical role of emotional intelligence. And as I just stated before, to give you a definition of what emotional intelligence is, and the reason why we're talking about it is we want you to understand that in order to have emotional intelligence, you want to make sure that you have the ability to have self awareness, self regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Because having emotional intelligence is going to take you and put you in rooms that your skills and talent may not always get you in. So the key to that is what we're going to discuss today. So I'm excited to chat about that. And just to get started and to kind of dive head first into one of the first things that I'm curious to know, in hearing all of this about emotional intelligence, the definition, what it means to you, Nicole, given that you're relatively new to cyber, can you talk about how you were able to pivot into this field as a Black woman with high emotional intelligence and how that's helped you with your transition?
Yes, one of the main things like coming into cybersecurity is I would say it has to be like your social skills and your self-awareness, because coming into this field, and like you said, I'm relatively new, um, and pivoting from healthcare, you have to be aware of like like if you're nervous and being confident, because you got to showcase those skills, because like you said, if people don't see, like, people always don't see your skill set, and they just see you as a person, and developing those social skills are very important, because networking is really literally how I got my first role, and having that motivation, because you're going to get a lot of no's. I'm 38, so transitioning career in your 30s, you might hear you're too old. It's too late for you, so just keeping that up, because it's never too late to learn. And I tell people all the time, I'm 38, so if I can do a career change, anyone can.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. I mean, y'all heard that first. She just told you she's 38. She doesn't look it, not a day over 38. So no matter where you are in life, you can take that next step. You can make that pivot in your journey. So thank you again, Nicole. Shaniqua, now, as a prior service woman, what are some key lessons learned in your transition from the military to civilian cybersecurity workforce? Like, did you notice any differences when managing the emotions of your colleagues when switching sectors?
So I had it kind of easy. Being in the reserves, it's really only weekend duty, and so being able to switch back and forth, I think, was really important. You pick up and understand how to be a leader. 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, and then you have your required training. But really, just being able to understand, like, even if the job can't get done by everyone on your team, how can you pull your own weight? So just knowing how to navigate, not only what your directives are and requirements, but also how to disseminate to the people that could do it the best. In the corporate world, I think that's what we do every day, especially as a pre-sales engineers, really just understanding what my limits are and how to leverage my team and who to go to if I need help, or, anything to kind of help along the process.
Thank you. And you mentioned leverage, and that kind of brings me to a little follow-up question to that. You know, how does this impact your collaboration and leadership approach as a Black woman? Because I know you talk about leveraging that team. So how does that play a part in that
So
collaboration?
it's always a strong line between being too aggressive and asking, too much, and really being assertive and taking the initiative. The military kind of taught me, unless you're willing to dive into the task, really don't disseminate it. Don't ask other people to help unless you're willing to join as well. And so that's kind of my motto. That's how I approach everything in life. My teammates know, they laugh at me. Like, I really want to be able to help with big tasks, especially if I know that I can't do it alone. Like, how can I help you get it done? How can we kind of make a stamp, within whatever the process is or the project is that we're trying to get completed? But it's all collaboration. People don't think about it, but everything you do is networking. Everything you do is, relationship building, and really trying to understand how to work with people and how to ask the right questions at the right time.
Thank you. And KJ, no, as an OG in cyber before it was cyber, like, can you share an experience where your emotional intelligence aided in the areas of conflict resolution?
Oh my God. I'm gonna grab one out of the sky because my background is so diverse. And I apologize to the audience. Ignore the background. I have no idea what that is, where it came from. We'll fix it later. So I would say, let's see. I would definitely say that for how I managed when I first came into the space, which was for me only 11 years ago, but when cybersecurity was a thing, even before I came in, one, there wasn't very many women in the space. So navigating it from emotional perspective, for me, it was identifying who the gatekeepers were within the organization and leveraging those individuals and saying, hey, I don't know very much. I'm new to the field. Can you help me out? And what I have learned over the years, even now, is that most of us who are in STEM in some aspect, we love to teach, we love to knowledge share. So it was relatively easy to get people to talk about what they did. And then from there, I learned and I navigated and I pivot, and I was able to address major concerns, whether it was a vulnerability, whether it was a breach in some respect. I was able to help my teams and get in and remedy issues. So regardless of when I came in, which was, for me only 11 years ago, but being a part of the technology community for so long, what I have seen is that even now, and using emotional intelligence to identify how you approach team members, meeting people where they are. I think that's really important. And because everyone's not a social butterfly, not everyone can handle stressful situations. So I would say those characteristics would be helpful, especially when it comes to implementing emotional intelligence.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add from the panel if that spoke to you?
I'll just say, KJ, you hit it on the head as far as meeting people where they're at. I think that's really what this is, right? The 5 different key elements that Delisha mentioned, one of them is self-awareness and regulation, but also motivation, right? So by our self-awareness, that we know that, they're not going to come to us, they're not going to respond to us the same way that maybe we would respond to a situation. And, being able to use that to motivate them to move in the way that, we need them to, right? For them to be successful. I think that is just that's one of my favorite sayings, meet them where they are. Working in the city, we have characters. I'm sure you all do too, where you work, everybody has different personalities, right? And being a woman in this space, makes it even more challenging, especially when you have individuals who report to you or you're working with, that you have to motivate for the greater good, right? So I really love that saying. I think it's so relevant in the work that we do. And again, to make the team successful, right? We have to meet them where we're at from a leadership perspective, but also when we're, part of the team as teammates. So thank you for bringing that up, KJ.
Thank you, KJ. Thank you, Jess. And kind of speaking to that and talking about environments where things may not be as supportive. So, as we know, as a Black woman in cyber, it seems like we always have to exceed expectations while still navigating an environment that's not always as supportive to us. In your experience as a sales engineer, Shaniqua, which is hardly ever talked about at the
Ever.
cyber pathway for us, how important is it to be your authentic self? And how was it being you?
So I'm going to be completely honest. I came from the consulting world first. So it was the long sleeve shirts to cover my tattoos. I wanted to make sure my hair was permed and I spoke a certain way. But I think really finding a culture and management or leadership that really supports, however you come to the table, is a huge part of it. And I tell people all the time, we talked about this before, you are really interviewing the companies that you're sitting in front of. You should really be understanding, how many people look like me? How can I show up to be my best self every day? And then find that environment to kind of flourish in. But also your circle too. Being a pre-sales engineer can sometimes be a lonely job. I mean, I tell people what I do and they look at me like I'm crazy, like you're a salesperson, but just being able to really have a group of people that understand, the things that you're trying to accomplish, the issues that you go through, and just having a sounding board is half the battle. But yeah, I mean, I hope my boss is on this stream, but I show up my authentic self every day. You're going to get Shaniqua. And so you just have to be comfortable in that and just know that that's okay and that's enough. So.
No, that's amazing. And your personality shines through. So I know if I feel it, the panelists
Thank
feel it.
you.
I know the crowd out there feels it. So
I
you definitely
appreciate
show up as yourself no matter what. So I definitely appreciate that energy. So thank you for that.
Don't make me cry.
Nikki.
I
Oh, no, so I want to blow up your spot, Nikki. I'll shift it to Nikki. Um, you have talked about the importance of changing the cybersecurity culture within your company. As a Black woman in a leadership position, operating at a high level of emotional intelligence, again, so that key word, emotional intelligence, what are your tactics for successful integration, especially when it comes to Black women?
So I have to answer this question very nuanced, right? The approach and tactics employed to integrate emotional intelligence can vary significantly depending on whether the company has a proactive or reactive cybersecurity stance. In a proactive cybersecurity environment, the focus is on foresight and prevention, which are a set of opportunities and challenges, an environment creates for you. Here, the emphasis in a proactive environment is, they're focusing on resilient infrastructure, fostering a security mindset first for all employees, and consistently educating the team on the emerging threats of the landscape. You have to be forward thinking in these environments, and because cybersecurity is a part of their strategic planning and their risk management strategy. In a proactive cybersecurity environment, they have the ability to anticipate threats. They've invested in training and awareness education. They have obtained the technologies and the defense mechanisms. And so ultimately, your emotional intelligence has an opportunity to thrive in a positive way. You can be a visionary leader in these environments. You can inspire and motivate teams to adhere to best practices and focus on innovating, the cybersecurity measures. In these kind of environments where they're proactive, you have the opportunity to focus on empathy and people. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about people, processes, and technologies. When you're in a proactive environment, you can focus less on the technology and the processes, and you can focus more on the people, growing them and understanding what are the challenges faced by the teams who are focusing on cybersecurity in that organization. You can also focus on communications and, being transparent with the various stakeholders. But this is conversely different when you're in a reactive cybersecurity environment, which often requires swift decision making and informed decisions. You may have to deal with stress management a little bit differently because you're navigating high pressure situations. You're making collected decisions during crises. You may also have to focus on your influence and your advocacy because you may be dealing with budget constraints. You may be having to advocate to your leader about the investment in resources. The program may be more compliance driven, where people are constantly trying to focus on, meeting the minimum regulatory requirements. And finally, you may have to focus on your resilience as an individual, right? Keeping the team morale, keeping integrity, because when you're in a reactive environment, people are constantly trying to take shortcuts. So I would ultimately say this response is very nuanced, that I employ my emotional intelligence mechanisms based on whether I'm in a proactive cybersecurity environment or a reactive. And that's how I employ those. So I know that was a lot, but that's like ultimately how I think about it.
No, I love how you broke it down between are you in proactive or a reactive state, and then flexing that
hmm
muscle depending on which state you're in. Would anyone else like
hmm
to add that or have any thoughts about being successful in integrating?
I do. And Nikki, I love the way you did break it down, because that's really what we all have experienced, especially if you've worked in any organization, regardless if it's a STEM type organization or financial or healthcare. We all work for organizations where the culture of the organization, going back to Shaniqua's point, is when you interview, you're interviewing them as well. So remember that you're interviewing them as well. So the question that I like, what Nikki's brought up, was the proactive, reactive. What type of organization are you culturally? How do you handle situations when we do have a breach? How do you handle a situation where we are under attack in some form or fashion, whether that's a breach or vulnerability? So I like that, because that's when your emotional intelligence kicks in. That's when you know that you're navigating the waters appropriately using your own personal tools of, how am I assessing the situation? I see everyone around me is going crazy. How do I make sure that there's a calm in this storm? Right? How do I ensure that we're very strategic, that we're following our policies and procedures and protocols in instances like that? That's when you shine. That's when your emotional intelligence really gets highlighted in situations like that. So thank you.
Thank you both. And let's pivoting to someone who energy is also infectious and just pops off the screen. A lot of y'all already know her. You can tell Jess, you have many years of experience in GRC, which requires you to interact with people of all positions and backgrounds. How has your self-awareness and self-regulation helped you in being successful in professional services as well as a public servant? Because we do know that you like to serve your community. It's very clear with Big. So let me know what you got for us.
Sure. I don't have any energy. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm that person.
This is low energy.
Yes. Great question, Delisha. Thank you for asking. Gosh, I'm like so excited right now because Shaniqua, what you said, Nikki, what you said, I'm just like, yes. But yeah, I like to tell this story when I do interviews or when I'm like, tooting my own horn. But when I first started in professional services auditing, I was hired by a firm that they specifically hired me because I knew the client from working from the government, blah, blah, blah. So they're like, Jessica, fix this, basically. And I was new. I was, trying to make a good impression. It was like all these things at once. And the client just was very, very difficult. One person in particular. And, they weren't from the DMV, although I'm on the East Coast. And, anybody on the East Coast knows we flow a little different around here than the rest of the country. So dealing with some folks that are from down South, Midwest, they're at a different speed. We have to come at them differently. So again, that emotional intelligence kicks in to make sure that we're meeting them where they are, right? And we understand how to get them motivated. So, and this was before emotional intelligence was even a word, but me being whatever, I guess back then I kind of knew. I was like, you know what, Jess, you got to make sure, you got to figure out how to make this person happy, right? What do I need to do? So I tried a lot of different things. I was constantly contacting them via email, phone calls. I went to the office to see them in person. I followed up, like, does that make sense? Do you understand? How can I help? Basically, how can I help? And, over time, they began to start trusting me, right? And so what I found from that, what I learned from that is there's no difficult situations that we can't overcome, right? The challenges. We just got to figure out how to communicate properly with that person and get them to trust you. And in professional services, we call that a trusted advisor. And that's something that I've learned, and it's stuck with me even in public service and as a public servant. We are trusted advisors, right? How can I help? And how can I help Delisha is maybe different than how I help Shaniqua, how I help Nikki. So I always like to tell that story because when you're in professional services and you're servicing a client, you need to exceed expectations, right? You need to deliver. If that report's due April 1st, it needs to be delivered April 1st. If you have to follow up tomorrow, you need to make sure that you follow up tomorrow. So meeting those deadlines, meeting those expectations, and then exceeding them, that's how you get repeat business, grow organic business, and, all that good stuff, right? Going in the public sector is a little different. We don't necessarily march to those orders all the time, but it's the same deal. We are providing a service to the public, right? I am providing a service to the city of Philadelphia. So I need to make sure that I'm meeting their expectations and exceeding them at a matter of fact, especially with critical infrastructure and critical services like water, health, elections, revenue, all that good stuff. So, I just feel that this emotional intelligence, the emotional awareness that we can have of ourselves, it is so critical, not just the way that we interact with our team, with our leadership, with our management, but also the services that we provide. Because no matter what you're doing, what your position is, you are providing a service to somebody. And that just goes back to, being proud of what you do as well. So it's a combination of things, But I always like to tell the story. I'd say it a little bit more detail, but the bottom line is, we're not going to always be working with somebody that's all, rainbows and sunshine. So we need to figure out how to make them happy. Sometimes we definitely have to humble ourselves, right? And if we don't have sympathy or empathy, we have to have sympathy and understand who we're talking to and how to get them motivated.
I like that. Can I add to that? Because that was good.
Yes,
Like,
please.
I feel like vulnerability, people are so scared of that, but that's a huge part of it. Like, customer relationships really thrive off of vulnerability. Brene Brown, I don't know if anybody has heard of her. I watch all of her YouTubes, I have all her books, but she talks about vulnerability in the workplace. And to that point, Jess, like, you cannot build a relationship without shedding a couple of layers first. And it makes it like so much more authentic when you can really say, it's okay if I look stupid, if I fail, like, this is how I'm coming to you, and showing, who I am. So that was good. I appreciate that. Let's put that in my pocket.
Thank you. And I do see we have a really good question in the chat from Ramon Burks. So, to the panel, how do you leverage your emotional intelligence to manage those above you, managing up?
I can speak to this. I jumped at it when I saw Ramon post it. I would say, Ramon, someone once told me, control your controllables. And you cannot control someone else's emotions. I'm sure everyone on this panel and in the audience know you cannot control someone else's emotions. But what you can control is your emotions and your self-awareness, right? And when you find yourself in those situations where you're trying to manage up, I would advise you to understand their motivations and their intent, which is driving their emotions, right? What motivates them every single day around their program or whatever they're driving? What are their intentions every single day? And the better you understand that, the better you will be able to adapt how you react in the environment. If my sister is on this call, she is someone who tells me probably on a monthly basis, Nikki, read the 4 agreements, read the 4
Yes.
agreements, and don't take anything personal. Don't take anything personal. I promise, there's something behind their motivations and intent that in the way that they are behaving or conducting themselves in the way that they're conducting themselves. And you can't control that. But what you can do is, like I said, understand their motivations and intent and adapt yourself around that.
Yes, thank you. Did anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to add, Nikki, always great points. You can speak to my students at any time. Because I teach cyber psychology, and emotional intelligence is a part of the platform of this course curriculum. And what Nikki hit on, the points that she hit on, is absolute. The only small thing that I would add to that is, and the 4 agreements, she's already ahead of it. There's a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I know they're writing, or they should be publishing, a 3.0. It's Emotion Intelligence. EQ is also another term that you'll hear as well. And so in the space of managing your people, she's absolutely correct in that. What I would add to it is that when you are talking about attempting to manage other people, the first thing I have always advised even my students now, regardless of their background, and my students, I teach at a 2-year. So my students range from various age groups, is that emotional intelligence starts with you. Similar to what Nikki said, it starts with you. So identifying what are your triggers. What triggers you? Is it their tone? Is it their behavior? What is it that really triggers you? So before you can start kind of managing or attempting to engage, I wouldn't say manage, like Nikki said, you can't manage it, but before you attempt to try to manage up, and I'm sure you guys have heard of that term before, identifying what your personal triggers are is the first key of that. And that book tells you about what are your personal, it takes you through a whole process of identifying what your triggers are. So starting from that as your baseline and the ground up, and then where Nikki took it, which is all the way home, which is identifying what you can control versus what you can't control. So I just wanted to add those that 2 cents to it.
Yes, I love that. I have the Four Agreements book, so I
Yeah.
make it a point to read it every year to remind myself of the Four Agreements. So that was really cool. And then when you talk about control your controllable, I was sitting here writing, like trying to grab a pen. I was like, let me write that down, put that on a shirt somewhere. So thank y'all for that. And I do want to pivot a little bit because I know there's some people in the audience who may identify as neurodivergent, or as this brilliant lady calls herself neurospicy. I just love that when we have that conversation. She was like, I call it neurospicy. So for all the neurospicy people out there, um, you know, as you being a Black woman in cyber who does identify as neurodivergent, or neurospicy, Shaniqua, can you can you be more specific? I can't talk today. About how do you navigate environments that aren't as supportive to you?
The short answer, get out of them. No, I'm joking. I think it's really important to, number one, know the environment that you're most comfortable in. I'm most comfortable at home, but I know that I can't do all of my work from home. So, how can I kind of make my environment adapt to me? Stay as organized as possible, make sure I communicate often. So, if I forget something, people understand why. Just really staying on top of like all the things that I know are kind of my shortcomings and compensating for them because there's no excuse. Like, just because your brain ticks a little different than someone else doesn't make it okay, for you to miss deadlines or not turn things in. But I over communicate with everyone about everything. And I think that has really helped me navigate. I went undiagnosed for a majority of my life, just thinking I was an overachiever and, until I was burnt out during COVID. Then you realize like ADHD was right here the entire time. And it's almost like uncovering another you. So, my husband laughs all the time about supplements and vitamins and staying on top of all those things. And that's a huge part of it too. Just making sure, you know what your shortcomings are, how to talk to people and communicate and just being consistent with it at all times.
Thank you. And can you speak a little bit more to how, because you were diagnosed later on, how has that impacted your cyber career in general? I know you spoke to you over communicate. Like, what are some other like tips you can give people who identify with you, who want to be in the position that you're in? It's like, okay, how do I manage this new thing that I got going
Well,
on being neurospicy?
for years, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, I thought it was just because I was an older millennial. I would hyper focus on things for days at a time. Like, I have to make sure I get this lab, whatever I'm trying to build perfectly before I can go to sleep. I have to make sure I know every single part of this thing before I can feel okay. But once being diagnosed, you start to understand how your brain ticks. And so, giving myself grace and understanding, like, my journey doesn't have to be over in a year. It doesn't have to be over in 18 months, which is what my mindset was before. I have to master this new position that I'm in. I have to make sure I master it in 2 years so I can get promoted. Like, everything was a block of time and a checkbox that I had to check. But now I'm really just enjoying being in the space that I'm in. I think a huge part of it too is making sure that, and I said this before, you align yourself with the right people. Because sometimes people can kind of be triggers and you don't even realize it. They can trigger your anxiety. They can trigger whatever parts of you are really like probably not the best. So just making sure like you stay on top of everything. And it's been a journey to say the least. I mean, along with the world changing, I definitely had to discover who I was as a professional all over again. I know Nicole has something to add. Feel free to jump in. I'm going to fix my camera real quick.
Yeah, one thing, like, also someone, who identifies as neurospicy, that's, I'm stealing that term from you. Once you mentioned it, is like you said, knowing your limits and over communicating. And over communication is like, it's looked at as a negative. And one of the things my mom said, I was a happy baby. And she goes, that's why you smile all the time. That's why you're always happy. You were a happy baby. So over communicating, I turned that into a strength. So working on my team, I work mainly as a security project manager. Well, that over communication, yeah, there's some people who don't like it. And, like you're saying, knowing people, and I just won't over communicate to them, but my boss and everyone else, they love it because they went from having no communication to someone who over communicates, and that's what they need. And even working with our clients, that's actually one of the things they were asking for the role I have now. They were looking for someone to over communicate because I guess the previous person just told them the bare bones. So, and even the way I structure my workday, because I know that, you get the triggers, it's like squirrel, what happened? So
Yeah.
I reopened with him. I was like, oh, I blocked part of my day. And can't ask me a question, but if you're ever looking at my calendar, you want to know why it's, it looks like it's blocked off. It's like, well, that's my time to do this. And because I work best when, I have it like scratching things off a task list. So that's how I do my day. And I made that work for me. And even, sharing that with my team, almost every job I had, everyone was like, oh, that sounds smart. Like, yeah, maybe I should try doing that. So trying to turn, negative into a positive is something that I always try to do in any situation.
Thank you, Nicole. And we actually have a really good question in the chat. Shanika, were you going to follow up or say something else?
No, I was just saying I like that. I like her approach.
For sure. And Nicole, while you were already speaking, there was a question in the chat specifically for you. What kind of wellness industry did you transition from, and what are the main transferable skills and characteristics help in cybersecurity, in particular, SaaS sales?
So I worked in healthcare on what they call the hospitalist side. So I'm the person in the hospital on the administrative side of things. And one of the main skills is that skills that transfer over is because in healthcare it's always in a reactive situation because you don't know what's going to happen, is being able to pivot quickly because sometimes things pop up and you got to take care of something and it has to be done now. And also when things happen, everything is on fire in a hospital, but organizing my time and having that communication with whoever asks me something. So as a project manager, there's always people asking me for things, and everyone's thing is an emergency. They need it today. But when I'm looking at my day and if something pops up, is having that communication. It's like, hey, I know you said you needed this by end of today. Did I move this off to tomorrow because of blah, 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 yada, yada. And most people be like, oh, okay, yeah, because communication, like I said earlier, communication is key. Another skills is working with difficult people because doctors, they're either social or they're not social. So working with people in the tech field, it's not intimidating because I'm used to working with people who don't communicate well, and you need to pull things out of them. So those are those are the skills that help me on a day-to-day. And I don't get intimidated very quickly because I've worked with doctors who will tell you how they went to Harvard, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's great, but I still need this done. So communicating with people and not being intimidated, it comes in handy working in security, especially being a newbie. And everyone knows more than you. And sometimes you'll get those people who think she doesn't know anything. She has nothing to add. I'm like, no, actually I do. And this is how I can add to the team.
Well, thank you, Nicole. That was a great question out there for you. And I did want to switch gears because I know we're running up on time, and I want to make sure that we also get to the Q&A part of the discussion as well. So in a switching gears, the importance of continuous learning and mentorship, we all know that our field is ever changing from a technical perspective, but also a societal and psychological perspective. In your professional opinions, what does the future look like for Black women, as well as people of color in cyber? And how can continuous learning and mentorship assist with increasing the percentage of us being industry leaders? Now, this is open to the entire panel, so feel free to jump in, whoever's ready to tackle that question.
I can start. Since I'm the OG.
Yes, OG.
Go ahead, girl.
So Miss OG has 3 mentors. So I would not be in this industry. I would not have made it this far in this career, especially not starting in the industry when most of you began. We did not have sensitivity trainings back in the day. We did not have the ability to be ourselves, right? It was not a very warm and welcoming space when I started, even 11 years ago. This is a positive because this is the shift that meaning women and people of diverse backgrounds, various diverse backgrounds, have shifted this industry. So I am very proud to witness it live and in person, and then watch myself now pivot thanks to you guys coming in with the storm and said, no, we ain't having what you did back in the day. We're going to do things a little different now. And we're going to expect and hold you accountable as organizations, as managers. So having a mentor, having a mentee, I think is both. Is a benefit. Any one of us, I think all of us on this call have some mentee that we're mentoring. And I think it's even regardless of how new you are to the industry, it's important to give back no matter where you are in your journey. So I would definitely say that it's important for us as professionals to continue to lean on each other, lean on other professionals that can guide and coach us through that process. But most importantly, you're never so far along in this industry or any industry where you don't need anybody. I don't personally believe that. You're always going to need support and help throughout your journey. So yeah, I have 3 mentors, and I'm a big proponent on using them to help me navigate my career and introduce me to new opportunities.
Okay, Jess, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to give a shout out to Reginald. She's one of our mentees in our big MP cohort 2024. And she's also a friend of mine. And she wants to break into cyber. And just as far as networking and the importance of mentorship, we ran into each other. And she said, hey, I want to do this. I was like, hey, I got mentorship. Let's do it. Right. So I mean, it's just as simple as that, being in the right room at the right time, but putting yourself in the right room at the right time, right? Being intentional with the moves that you make in your cyber career, any career for that matter. But I also have 3 mentors myself, KJ. I just learn from everybody, right? We have direct and indirect mentors, and one of my mentees, she calls them gang. She's like, I got a gang of mentors, right? So, I mean, I'm learning. Shanique was my new, you're my new role model. I'm like, I want to be like
What?
you, girl. Yes, girl. We gonna do.
I look up to you, Jess. You better stop.
We just
Yeah,
met,
Jess is
so.
my model.
And yeah, I love this so much because the circular learning, I love that word. A couple of us are professors and just giving back. I learn from my students every day. Every time I teach, they teach me some, KJ, just like you just said. I'm like the OG in the room, right? They come with all sorts of new cyber, talk that I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about it that way. So perspectives is everything. And the difference between, I won't steal Shaniqua's thunder because I know I want you to talk about the difference between a mentor, a mentee, and a sponsor, right? But I just got to say, Blacks in Cyber has honestly changed my life as far as networking, colleagues, opportunities for professional services, mentors, mentees, all of that. And we've been really fortunate with the mentorship program to touch over 200 people at this point with our fourth cohort. So shout out to Nicole O was a mentee with us 2 years ago. Shanique was a mentor. Felicia spoke with us a couple years ago. We got Nikki and KJ, hanging out with us. So, and actually, Nikki presented with us the winter conference. So, just looking at it like that, everything's circular. So, if you don't have a mentor, you need to get one. And if you're at that place, you need to have a mentee too, right? Because we need to keep giving back.
So I'm going to knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. So I agree completely. I think a huge part of it, and I'm going to keep drilling on vulnerability, is like, I never meet any of my mentees as if they know less than me, or I'm, because of my title or my experience, that they know more than me. I have a handful of mentees, which I didn't even anticipate. It's like having I can't even explain it, but they look at me as if I have all this knowledge, but every conversation I'm constantly learning from them. I'm understanding like how I can grow and be a better person. And so if we don't come into this, I think the best way for women in cyber to kind of push forward is we all have to be willing to not only have somebody that we look up to, which Jess, I'm telling you, I looked up to you for a long time, but have someone that you can look up to, but also have people that you're pulling up as well, because you never know like what impact you may have, what words you may share, books, resources, whatever the case may be. But we had a conversation the other day about the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. So, of course, I have mentors that I go to about my professional development, what my next step is. But my sponsor is really there to be that voice in the rooms that I can't necessarily go in. And they don't have to look like me. And I advocate for them not to look like you, because these are almost the people that understand and know what your journey is, what skills you have, the projects that you put forward. And they're in those rooms with executive leadership and everybody else saying, hey, Shaniqua did this last quarter. Shaniqua did this last year. I think you should give her a chance, because not everybody is willing to speak up in a room full of people that probably wouldn't say a name like Shaniqua. So just making sure that the mentor is there to kind of help you guide your steps, but the sponsor is really there to help be that voice. Because being honest, I haven't seen until this current company a lot of people in executive leadership roles that could really say my name. So just being able to have both, is huge. It's a huge advantage.
No, thank you both for sharing that. Nicole, you want to go?
I would say, as far as women of color going into cyber, I think it's a very positive outlook, because one thing I've noticed in general with Black women, we support each other. Like, how many times have you seen a Black woman walk past you? She has some nice shoes, like, hey, shoes. That's how we are. Like, we support each other. Like, I was introduced to KJ and Nikki last week, and I said, I still need to hit you guys up because I have questions for you. And like you said, you have to give back. Yes, I'm new to the field, but one thing I believe in is you always pass it down. Like, what I don't know, somebody else does. I referred two people to the big mentorship, and they got it in, and they will tell you. I tell them all the time, if I don't know it, I know enough other people who do, and I will ask those questions. Let me introduce you to someone, and just show up. And they say statistically, Black women, we're more educated than anybody else in this country. So there's nothing that we can't do. Anything we want to do, we can. So don't let nobody stop you. Small children and everything we can support, and part of the organization. There's also those organizations alone are the reason why, because they were the organizations that made me feel okay. They're the reasons it doesn't matter. So putting yourself in people who want to help, who care about you and want you to succeed, then that's great. Like, I tell anyone, I was like, my goal is for you to get your first job is to be way more than I make. I say, because you make more than me, that makes me feel good. That means I must have said or did something right. So always passing that down and cheering people on along that way. I think, Black women, we can run this if we wanted to. We just got it. Let's just do it.
Nicole, you took it right from me. I was about to say, like, have be inspired, right? I will never forget when I saw Michaela Barnett on LinkedIn promoting this, and this was like early on. And I will admit it was blind support. She's Black, she's talking about security. And then when I got into the actual group and I saw the amount of impact that she was trying to have, put together conferences, I mean, I really was inspired, seeing how big moved through the pandemic, hosting the conferences, trying to keep bringing everyone together, people of color, during COVID around cybersecurity. So number one, I was just like, okay, this came up on my timeline. I'm reaching out. I'm participating. It says Blacks in Cybersecurity. Obviously, you want to vet some things once you're a part of it, and vet those people you're seeking or that you admire. But like I said, Nicole, you took the words out of my mouth. Be inspired. It's the same way you see someone with some nice shoes, you look at a title, be like, oh, this person is, leading this. Okay, let me reach out to them. Like, I want to catch up with Shaniqua, to understand a lot of the things that she's mentioned tonight. And the other women on the panel tonight, you guys are all very interesting, and I have more questions. We didn't all get a chance to catch up the other night, but I can't wait to talk post-panel. But as we're on this panel tonight, I hope people feel inspired by us, and I hope everyone on this call tonight feels empowered to reach out to all of us and ask questions, because we are not gatekeepers over here. We want to continue to push it forward and share. Even if we can't spend that amount of time with you, we can at least share resources, put you in connection with the right group, with the right people. We owe that to you guys. So that's what I think about it as far as the future.
Thank you, ladies. And so we have 2 more questions. So I'm going to do a little bit of rapid fire. So whoever wants to jump in for these last 2 questions. But I definitely want everyone to answer the last question for sure. So the next question, I want to shift gears into work-life balance. So many women in our field struggle with time management in their career and personal life. What are some tactics and tips that you implement in your life in order to manage that healthy work-life balance?
Nikki, I'm gonna let you start on that one. I'll go after you.
I was just about to say I can do, but I will say this. Something that Shaniqua said earlier, and I felt it in my soul. At this stage, most of us know ourselves pretty well. You're self-aware. And for me, I have 2 types of burnout. I have my weekly, which normally happens on Wednesdays. And then I have, like, every 60 days, I have more of my mental and physical burnout. So let me repeat that. On Wednesdays, it's more of like an emotional. I've interacted with a lot of people. I've given out empathy. I've tried to understand a lot of people. So every Wednesday, for the most part, I'm most likely, emotionally burned out. But every 60 days, I find myself more emotionally or physically, because at this point, I'm hitting key deliverables. I'm trying to keep up, diet, workout, X, Y, and Z. So I share those 2 types of things because, number one, I want to show you guys, how self-aware I am about that. And that's something you're going to need in cyber. But ultimately, you have to have tactics to address that. On Wednesdays, I don't know if you guys could probably see, but I have tons of planks over here. So know that every Wednesday, when I feel that level of burnout, that's probably what one of these planks in this room represent. That is one of my tactics in terms of making sure that I'm addressing, like, what is going to make me feel good and feel healthy. I mean, people are probably like, how does buying a plant feel healthy? Well, the people who on the call who know it and are plant parents know what I mean by that. But you have to know what are the things that make you happy midweek, and it's going to address that burnout. And trust me, trying to find the plant that you like and that you want midweek on Wednesday in a grocery store for a cheap price is something that makes me happy during the week. So I bring that up because having that level of being able to step away, like, hey, I've had a Wednesday dealing with cybersecurity incidents, dealing with personalities, dealing with different things. I know what I could go out and do and make myself happy. When I'm hitting that 60-day type of burnout, mental and physical burnout, I know it's time to put vacation time on the calendar. It's time to disconnect from work and be transparent with people, like, hey, you guys, I'm going to be taking some time soon. I want to transition off some of this work, and we will catch up soon. So that's pretty much how I handle those 2 types of burnout for myself. So,
And
I'll
the
pass
only
it to
thing
you,
I want to, I just want to do 2 letters. No. It took me decades to learn that word and to know what my boundaries were. And I again, that's where it goes back to where we are generationally now with Black women in cyber, and where we were, 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago. My admiration is that women are starting to create boundaries for themselves and say no. No, I'm going to take off time for a funeral. No, literally. I mean, they're talking about people who don't get this. No, I'm going to take time away from my family, kids, partner. I'm taking some time because I need a break. And setting those boundaries for yourself. And I can tell you the majority of the women and the people that are listening to this, if you're a male or female in cybersecurity, you already know that we are wired differently than the rest of the people out there. Our brains are wired differently if you work in technology, and we are A-type personalities, and we want to do everything, and we want to kill it. We want to do it. We want to be successful, but we also have to learn how to create those no boundaries and what that means. Unfortunately for me, and I'm going to share this and be very transparent with the audience, for me, it took a stroke. And it doesn't need to go that far for me to say, okay, enough is enough. I need to scale back. You should not have to put your body through all of that just to please who at the end of the day. Again, like Nikki said, the self-awareness is really key, and learning how to say no.
Thank you
To
so much, Nikki.
piggyback,
You said a word. Go ahead.
KJ, you took exactly, I literally wrote down boundaries. I'm very upfront. Like you said, I'm 38. I'm aware of who I am. And like you said, when you interview a company, you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you. And I'm very transparent. Like, I have 2 small children. I like to volunteer for the PTA. I like to go on vacations, and I take my lunch. So, and I work 100% remote, and I don't do good for micromanaging. So, that's something I do bring up in interviews, and people are like, oh, you shouldn't do that. I was like, no, because if it's a good company, they will understand that. If it's not a good company, you dodged a bullet. But putting up those boundaries and being honest about, like, I need time off, and saying no, I noticed that managers actually respect that. They like to know that, because you don't tell them no, they'll just keep piling on things. And another thing I put is a support system. Like I said, I have 2 small children. I can hear them over in the living room right now, giving my husband a hassle. But if having a support system, whether it's your mom, dad, girlfriends, or whatever, that that does help to, like, debrief and relax. Because like Nikki said, you're going to get stressed out, and you need to have that either me time or your girl time or your partner time, whatever you need. And that's the key for me to dealing with time management and stress management at that.
I don't know if there's time for one more caveat. I'll be super quick, Delisha. The biggest thing that I've learned is that this job, even though it takes up a majority of your day, is only a small portion of your life. Like, to Nicole's point, my kids come first. Every job in the past 10 years, has kind of focused around their schedules, understanding what they need, how I can show up for them, how I can show up for my husband, how my parents can know that I'm straight. This job is only a small portion of it. So work-life balance should come naturally. You still want to do 100% your best, but you still know that you have to show up as yourself every day in the world. So just remembering that makes it a lot easier to make decisions, because I'm going to sew, I'm going to, do whatever I want on my lunch break or whenever I have time, but I have to decompress. So that's definitely a part of the whole process.
Thank you. And I just want to take this moment to acknowledge what you said, KJ, and to say that I appreciate you so much for being vulnerable in that moment. I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad that you're here with us, smiling, looking beautiful. So thank you for that, because you spoke a word there, and it's really important. And I hope that people really heard you when you said that nothing is worth your health and your life. So
I just like to point out that all these women have plants in the background, so I think I'm hitting a note somewhere.
I'm with you, Nikki. I got you, girl.
I do.
Shout out to all the plant moms and dads out there. It's Joyce. Thank you for lining it up for us. Um, Last question before we hop into Q&A. What advice would you tell your younger self that you wish you would have known sooner? We're talking about cyber. Like,
Can I go first? I feel like I've been chewing on this all
okay.
long.
Go ahead.
I really had to think about it because I had one, but it wasn't impactful enough. I really wanted to like punch it. Who you are in a relationship with or decide to marry has a huge impact on your career. And I don't think people even understand how much of an effect it has. I've been married prior. And my career, I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I wasn't doing the best. I got remarried and I actually enjoy my job. Now, it could be a portion of a new culture. It could be I'm getting older. I'm like you, Nicole. I'm an older millennial, so I'm coming into myself. But who you are in a relationship with has a huge impact on your career. I tell so many people, I tell anybody that will listen, make sure you choose wisely because you need someone that can listen to you, be a sounding board. My husband is in cyber as well, so he understands the issues that I deal with, customers, but just choose wisely, early on with who you decide to marry and move forward in this career. I'm off my soapbox now.
Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. I would talk about gatekeepers. And I know for some people that is a buzzword, but I'm sure you guys know in the cyber industry, or if anything you're trying to do, I would say to her that gatekeepers are only relevant if you're trying to use their gate. I would tell you, go make your own or go find one that you're welcome in. And, do not be afraid to go out there and carve out new paths for yourself uniquely. Ultimately, I think I spent a lot of time, I could reflect and say I kept trying to use someone's gate, trying to do it the way they did it, get into my career or get into something the way they did it, and maybe that wasn't what was meant for me. So now I would just tell my younger self, like, girl, build your own gate or use another one. Don't get discouraged.
I'll go next. I guess my younger self has in like 4 years ago. So, I would just, you guys already basically said what I said is, what I'm thinking is when you get those no's, there's always a different way. You're not going to do we're not going to run into anything that someone has not done yet. So one person's path is not your path. And like KJ said, having, multiple mentors, Jess talked about that too. I have like a whole group of people that are my sounding boards, and they will give me different advice and putting that together and seeing how it works for me. So I would have to say just making sure you, I would say like yes, I did do it a couple years ago. Just put yourself in that right place and don't be scared, because whether you're 20 something, 30 something, going into anything new is scary. Don't be scared. Everyone had a first day, so it's okay. People will give you grace. Just tell them it's my first day. I just need to learn, and so don't be scared, and don't be scared to reach out to people too. On LinkedIn, if you see someone with a title you want, reach out to them. If they don't respond, that's fine. There's millions of people on LinkedIn. You can find someone else who will want to spend 10, 15 minutes with you.
Thank you. And I know we're running against time. We'll have one more, KJ.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, it would be you're smart. You're smart, and nothing and no one can take that away from you. That's what I would tell her. Period. I is smart. I is beautiful.
So I I'd love to share real quick too, Delisha. I
Yes.
know we're up on time, but I love this question and I always change my answer. But I'm gonna be vulnerable with y'all right now because I'll tell you what, my whole career, nobody ever knew I had kids. That was just something that I never brought up. Like I was never, oh, I gotta leave early, do this, some kids. So like I would and I always kind of compared myself to somebody who's my same age, who's a male or, white or, whatever. Like, oh, well, they're 35 and a CISO already, and I'm 35 and I'm still an analyst or whatever. Just like I would just tell myself, you know what, stay true to the decisions you make. And like family is way more important than your career. And us as women, I think that's a lot. That's hard sometimes. It was for me. So I would just be like, stay the course. It's all going to unfold as it should. And, be present in what you're doing, but also know that, work hard to get to the next step and achieve your career goals.
Thank you.
That was huge. That was like, that was huge. That was huge. That was huge.
I felt that.
Yes, we're all opening up.
I was making notes. You guys said so many great things. I'm all like,
no, I'm just gotta go back to Nicole. You're never too old. I'm 56. I'm 56 and I'm proud of it. And I know a lot about AI, but that's because I'm learning. I'm pivoting. So yeah, you're never too old. We all know that.
Yeah, this has been great. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Jess. I mean, as y'all see, vulnerability, as you all are seeing and witnessing right now, vulnerability is strength. You see strength in all these women that you're watching right now on this panel, and vulnerability is the core of that. So I feel like that's shown through and through here tonight. So thank you again, ladies, and thank you to those out there joining us for your time and patience with us. Now it's time for a little Q&A. So we're going to try to get to one or two questions before we'll let y'all go, but maybe we'll have a part two. Who knows? If we're back by popular demand. But so let me see what questions do we have. What's some good questions? Let's see. I saw some. Going back. Oh, here's a good one. What is the best way to get the word out about cybersecurity, especially to the urban community and to people who may not know what programs like this exist?
Can I take that, please? Because I just
Yes.
I feel like that. So yes, we want to get the word out. We want to make sure that people understand the impact that cybersecurity has. Um, Not everyone is made for this field, and I don't want to give out the misconception that people can't do it, but it really takes a certain amount of grit. It takes a certain amount of self-study, but definitely be an advocate in order to get the word out. Tell everyone the impact that cybersecurity has on national security and the importance of it. But just always keep in mind that there are other complementary fields that help cybersecurity out. But yeah, I guess in a nutshell, just make sure you use your voice the best way that you possibly can, and just mention the impacts for sure. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of hard work.
Thank you for that. And then the next question we have is, how can someone transition into cybersecurity? Did any of you attend boot camps? Because I know boot camp is like a buzzword lately, so that's a good question.
I started in cybersecurity through HR. The cybersecurity space, and I'm so who was talking a few moments ago because we just met the other night. My sister friend, she mentioned not everyone, and I'm glad that she said that not everyone is meant for this field, but there are adjacent fields, domains that you can work in to support the cybersecurity field. And sales engineering is definitely one of them. We don't have enough, particularly Black women that are in the sales engineer domain. We don't have enough Black women who are doing pen testing. We don't have enough Black women. So I would say that from a boot camp perspective, for me, I took a few boot camps. Either they worked or they didn't. It's a lot of money. My encouragement as an educator is that you train yourself as much as you can. This industry knowledge changes quite a bit unless you're doing direct hard line of network network monitoring or network architecture in networking. So some of those domains don't change very much. Cryptography doesn't change very much. But if you're doing kind of the softer skills in cybersecurity, you can really self-train, starting with Security Plus to give yourself an idea of whether or not that works. But be careful with boot camps out there. Some work, but be careful about spending a lot of money at boot camps unless it's something that you've properly vetted.
Mm-hmm. I would also say it's not always about, the hard skills or the technical skills you have. I always tell someone who's coming like from a journalism and a communications piece, communications is a huge piece of cyber. I couldn't tell you probably the amount of command centers out here who need someone that's good at communications, right? Whether you've written communications, HR communications, PR communications, something like that. If you're good at communicating, that is a transferable skill. So while that isn't a technical skill, that is something we all may know how to do or may own as a responsibility or a role. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There's communications, the administrative backgrounds. I know a lot of people get stuck in doing administrative things and like, well, how can I, transfer, what I've been doing as an administrator in some setting into cybersecurity? I can tell you there is a huge place for people needing help with managing, installing, and maintaining things. And while you may have to go and study some of those things so that you know the knowledge, the language that we speak, those things that is still transferable. So I don't want anyone to think just because you don't have the dedicated security or technical skills that some of your transferable skills like communications, your ability to be proactive, your ability to have deep analysis, those skills aren't something that can be leveraged in the cybersecurity world.
Thank you, Nikki. Yes, so we are posting our LinkedIn's in the chat for you all to connect with us. So please connect with us. These were all great questions. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we really appreciated you all being super engaged as an audience. That was the final question and answer for the night. So thank you all for joining us. Panelists, again, we're going to drop our LinkedIn links in the chat. If you send an invitation to connect with us, please include a note saying that you attended this panel. So it's been real. Take care, y'all. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.